The sudden cessation of the attack left the citadel in a ringing silence, broken only by the hiss of residual shadow magic cooling on the stone. Elara still had her hands pressed against Kael's face, her warmth a shocking intrusion into his eternal cold. But the touch, while stabilizing for him, was a consuming fire for her. The curse, no longer merely an ambient pressure, was a living wire threaded through her veins, a cold, heavy pulse that mirrored Kael's own tortured heartbeat. Kael slowly pulled back, his eyes searching hers, no longer cold with dominance, but shadowed with a terrifying realization. "You fool," he repeated, his voice low and ragged, stripped of its regal resonance. "That was not a temporary fix. You have allowed it to anchor. It will consume your essence until there is nothing left but a shell." Elara could barely speak. The heat in her chest was subsiding, replaced by a profound, draining chill. She felt stronger, paradoxically, yet utterly exhausted, as if she had just donated years of her life force. "It anchored," she whispered, her voice husky. "But it anchored to us. You are still alive. You are still whole. Now, tell me what to do with the Fae." Kael stared at her for another moment, his expression unreadable. He saw not a sacrifice, but a catalyst, a mortal so recklessly defiant that she had rewritten the rules of his ancient damnation. "The Fae are a momentary distraction," he finally said, regaining his composure, though his eyes never lost their troubled depth. "The damage is minimal. Their breach served only one purpose, to force my hand, and it succeeded." He stepped away fully, summoning a swirl of shadows to conceal the damage to his clothing and the lingering vulnerability on his face. "You cannot remain in this cell. The energy you now carry makes you a target, both for the curse and for my rivals. You are no longer merely a prisoner, Elara. You are essential." He led her through a labyrinth of black marble corridors, moving with a controlled, predatory grace. The citadel, usually a place of silent, looming shadows, now seemed to press in on them, the shadows recognizing the dual essence of the king and the new stolen light that accompanied him. They ascended several levels, reaching the private, untouched core of his dominion, a sanctuary Elara realized was designed not for luxury, but for solitude. Kael's private chambers were vast, circular, and disturbingly beautiful. The walls were lined not with stone, but with shelves holding thousands of ancient leather-brown tomes. There were no windows, only the occasional shaft of muted crimson light emanating from hidden runic inscriptions carved into the floor. This was the place where the Shadow King lived and fought his internal wars, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of centuries. "This is the safest place in Viridian," Kael announced, gesturing to the expanse of the room. "The defenses are key to my essence. Now they are also key to yours. You will remain here. You will eat the food provided. You will rest. We need to measure the full extent of this binding." Elara felt the intense pressure of the proximity. In the small cell there had been bars and a door. Here there was only empty space and the terrifying knowledge that she was alone with the immortal being she had just saved. She walked over to the nearest shelf, running her fingers over the dusty leather. "A library, I should have guessed. What does the Shadow King read? Treatises on eternal subjugation?" "Treatises on eternal survival," Kael corrected, his voice flat. He moved to a low, heavy table where a single crystalline vial rested, filled with a viscous, inky liquid. "We have time now. The Fae will not return quickly, having suffered losses. Tell me your story, Elara. Not the one the Watchers whisper, the Queen of Scars, the Shadow's ghost, but the truth of the mortal girl who grew reckless enough to breach my vault." He sat down, watching her with unnerving stillness. His gaze was an examination, cold and meticulous, but Elara sensed a deeper necessity behind it. He wasn't demanding information, he was seeking patterns, logic, any anchor she might offer him. She hesitated, her gaze drifting over the room. The oppressive intimacy of the chamber was demanding a surrender she wasn't ready to give. She was the thief. She had spent her life guarding her secrets like treasure. But Kael had just seen her at her most vulnerable, the reckless, selfless moment of sacrifice. Perhaps an equal surrender was required to gain any further leverage. "My name is Elara Rain," she began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "I wasn't born a thief. I was born in the lower district of Viridian, in a section of the city that the Shadow Court doesn't bother with because it's already bled dry by the gangs the court permits to exist." "The dregs of mortality," Kael supplied dryly. "The real people," she countered fiercely. "My father was a historian. He believed Viridian's darkness wasn't just magic, it was infrastructure. He believed the Shadow Court was maintained by a specific set of artifacts and treaties, and if you broke those artifacts, you broke the magic." Elara walked to the center of the room, her voice hardening with the memory. He focused his life on one target, the amulet of solar tethering. He needed it to prove his theory. "He taught me everything: lockpicking, evasion, the hidden passages, the language of the old runes." Kael listened without moving, the silence of the vast chamber swallowing her words. "When I was 16, he found the location of a minor relic, a simple protective ward the court used to ward off lesser demons. He tried to steal it to prove his methods. He was caught by your watchers, Kael." Her breath hitched, the old pain raw and immediate. "They didn't kill him. They made an example. They let him starve to death in one of the lower dungeons. They sent me a piece of his robe." The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Elara's face was a mask of cold fury, revealing the scar tissue of a betrayal that went deeper than physical pain. "I didn't steal for wealth after that. I stole for vengeance. I stole everything I could that was important to your court, hoping to weaken your grip. That's why I came for the amulet, not for leverage, not for justice, for his memory, for pure, cold spite." She stopped, the silence now stretched taut between them. She had revealed the origin of her Queen of Scars persona, not a cool, calculating criminal, but a broken hero driven by 16 years of unrelenting grief and hatred. Kael stood up slowly, the dark fabric of his garment rustling softly. He moved towards her, and this time Elara did not retreat. The curse was a physical tether now. Retreat was useless. "Revenge is a mortal, petty impulse," Kael stated, his voice quiet. "A foolish waste of your limited lifespan." "And what is your purpose, King?" she challenged, her voice low. "To sit here for 10,000 years, fighting a war with your own shadow? That sounds like a waste of eternity." Kael closed the distance between them, standing so close that Elara felt the drain of the Shadow Court's endless winter. His power did not lash out. Instead, he studied her face, his gaze focusing on the residual pain in her eyes. "We are more alike than you care to admit, little thief," he murmured. "We both sought to breach an unbreakable system for a purpose doomed to failure. My curse was also born of a failure, a desperate, foolish reach for power that would protect my people from a greater threat." He placed one finger beneath her chin, tilting her face up. The gesture was possessive, yet strangely gentle. "You hate the shadow because it took your father. I am the shadow because I failed to save my queen. That is the truth of my dominion. It is built on a memory, just like your crusade." The revelation was shocking. A queen, a loss. The Shadow King, the brutal tyrant, was himself a widower, a broken hero whose eternity was a penance. Elara saw a brief, fleeting flicker of the man beneath the monster, a man who understood loss, who understood the destructive power of a broken vow. "The curse demands isolation," Elara repeated, her voice soft. "But you kept your watchers, your generals. Why did you isolate yourself from them, Kael?" "The curse doesn't demand solitude," he clarified, his voice barely a whisper. "It demands an absence of light. It demands that I forget the warmth of life, of touch, of companionship. It demands that I forget her." He paused, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "But you are a thief of light. You carry it easily. You made the mistake of giving it to me freely. Now you will help me carry this burden." Their eyes locked. The tension was no longer hostility. It was an electric, painful, forbidden understanding. The shared trauma, her loss, his failure, had instantly dismantled the walls of their enemies-to-lovers dynamic. They were united by a desperate need to survive an impossible existence. "An alliance, then," Elara concluded, pushing past the sharp fear and embracing the recklessness. "Not a capture. You tell me what you need, and I will help you survive your shadow. In return, I want safe passage out of Viridian when this is done." Kael gave a slow, predatory smile, the first true, honest expression she had seen from him. "A reasonable negotiation, little thief. But I warn you, the curse feeds on the mortal connection. Your light is already dimming. The more you help me, the more of your life the shadow will claim. I am not guaranteeing your survival, Elara. I am guaranteeing your presence." He sealed their terrifying agreement not with a handshake, but with a sudden, sharp, almost painful pressure on her jaw, a possessive gesture that both claimed her and warned her. Over the next few days, their arrangement solidified into a strange, intense rhythm. Kael began training her, or rather, teaching her how to coexist with the shadow. He taught her how to sense the movement of the ambient magic, how to differentiate his power from the background noise of the citadel, and most importantly, how to channel the curse's feedback loop without being entirely consumed by the overwhelming cold. Elara learned that when Kael was stressed, the curse would leak, coating any nearby surface in a thin layer of sharp frost. When she touched him, the frost would retreat, flowing back into his core, transferring the coldness directly into her own chest. The sensation was agonizing, but she pushed through it, knowing every moment she endured was a moment of Kael's survival and a step toward her freedom. One evening, while running a basic channeling exercise, Elara faltered. The cold hit her with the force of a physical blow, staggering her. She gasped, doubling over, clutching her chest. Kael was instantly beside her, his movement a blur. "What is wrong?" he demanded, his voice laced with uncharacteristic alarm. "It's nothing," she forced out. "Just the cold. It hits harder sometimes." But Kael was already examining her. He pulled back the collar of her shirt, his fingers brushing the skin just above her heart. There, etched faintly against her pale skin, was a small, delicate mark. It looked like a winding thorn vine, wrapping around a single, tiny, dark crescent moon. The lines were the color of deep midnight blue, cold and permanent. Elara stared at the mark, her mind reeling. It was not a tattoo, it was a brand. "What is that?" she asked, her voice trembling, feeling a new, profound wave of terror wash over her. Kael's face, usually a mask of control, was suddenly ravaged by guilt and fear. His eyes fixed on the mark, which mirrored the very symbol of his shadow court, the symbol of the royal binding. "It is the price of the bond," Kael said, his voice quiet with dread. "The curse is not just taking your light, Elara, it is claiming you. It has begun to mark you as its own." He didn't need to say more. The mark meant she wasn't just his tether, she was his queen. And the dark, eternal heart of the Shadow Court now beat, irrevocably and dangerously, within her mortal chest. Their alliance had not broken the curse, it had merely found a new, fatal host. Elara knew with a terrifying certainty that she would never be going back to Viridian's surface. Her new eternity had just begun.